Xlookup. Xlookup is a newish formula. At the time of recording this video, it's fairly new. It's been around for a while, but not nearly as long as VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, index and match. And when it first came out, there's a lot of hype about it. It replaced, a lot of people would say it was much better than index and match. Index and match, people would say no, it's not as good. Personally, because I make a lot of spreadsheets for a lot of different companies and a lot of people aren't necessarily using the most up-to-date version of Excel, I tend to use formulas that use older functions. So I would prefer index and match also because I do it all the time. It comes naturally. It's what I know, and that's fine. I don't have an issue with it. If you have been using VLOOKUP or HLOOKUP, I would suggest using Xlookup instead. It's one formula that can do both. And if you've never used an index and match formula and you have the newest version of Excel and it's only you and people who have the latest version using it, and you've all got access to this Xlookup, it's not a bad alternative. It does have some pros, and I'll show you how it works. I don't use this all the time. I literally just looked this up when it came out to see what it was all about, and just refreshed now to show you what it's about. But yeah, I don't use this all the time. But it is, as I said, if you don't know how to use index and match and you're learning how to use lookups, it's not a bad formula to use. So let me show you how it can be done. There's three ways, essentially. Number one is to replace the VLOOKUP. Number two is to replace HLOOKUP. And number three would be to actually use HLOOKUP and VLOOKUP together, which would then essentially do what the index and match can do in its entirety. So let's have a look and see how to use that. Let's first do the VLOOKUP alternative. So if we put in equals X lookup, whoops, and then open the brackets, the first thing it asks for is the lookup value. So what we want to look up, so if we're replacing the VLOOKUP, then what we would do is we want to actually have a look up the number of the rows. So if we say, for example, we want to have a look up in row 9, so we click on that to say which row number we're looking at. And then we want to do the lookup array. Let's have a lookup in this column over here. So, sorry, the lookup array is this column over here because we're saying we want to look up number 9 in that column. That's the lookup array. And then we do the comma for the return array. So which value do we actually want to return? So let's just return the value in that column. So what we're essentially doing is we're saying find 9 in that column and return the value in that column. Then we've got a few extra things here in the square brackets. You don't have to use those, but you can if you want to. So if you put in another common space, it says, what do we do if not found? So if it can't find the right answer, what do we do? I normally just return a blank. And then it also says match mode. So if you don't know what match mode is, if you actually put a 0 in, it says 0 is an exact match, -1 is an exact match, or the next smaller item, 1 is an exact match, or the next larger item, and then 2 is a wildcard character match. So we go for 0 because we want an exact match. And the last one is the search mode. Now search is search first to last, -1 last to first. So this is one of the advantages of Xlookup over the other ones. You can actually look up from bottom to top rather than top to bottom if that's something that you need. In this case, it's just use the 1. So we can do that. Click enter. Now what it does is it finds number 10 because that's in the same row as number 9. So that's essentially is replacing the VLOOKUP, but it's doing it with a few more options at the end, which are quite useful to have. Let's have a look at it the other way around. If you want to replace the HLOOKUP, now all of a sudden we're saying look up that value because you've got the column value in that cell. Look up that value with what lookup array. So now we're saying that's where you look up because that's where you're going to find the A, B, or C. And which one do we return? Let's just use this line over here. We say we return that line over there. And then again, we can do, what do we do if not found? We don't have to use those items. We can just simply close it off there. And what it'll do now is it will say 3, but it says formula limits adjacent cells. That's fine. So we've got the 3. So if we look at column C, and which row did we select? We selected that row. So this was the row that we selected in column C, which is 3, which is in fact correct. So we are looking up in an HLOOKUP. I don't know for a fact what the defaults are, but I would imagine the default, if not found, would just be an error, the mode, and these other ones, the mode would be looking up the correct way. So you don't necessarily need to use those if you don't want to, but if you specifically want to say which way around it looks up, or what it's matching, or what to do if not found, you can do that. So that's the Xlookup to replace the VLOOKUP and the Xlookup. But what happens if you want to look up both? Well, then what you do is you use what we call a nested formula, but you use Xlookup nested within Xlookup. So we're going to start the Xlookup formula, and when it asks us what range we're looking at, we basically redo the Xlookup again. So it's slightly more complicated, but let's have a look and see if this makes sense. So we do the equals Xlookup. Open your bracket. We can start with what we had before. So we say lookup value 9, that cell K8. Where's the lookup array? Here. And now when it says what's the return array, we simply start the return array. We simply start the Xlookup formula again, and we do it the other way around. So look up that value. Where's the lookup array? There's the lookup array. And then the return array, we select all 3 columns. So it matches up with what we've selected here, and it matches up with what we've selected at the top. Now, obviously, I'm not necessarily locking these things. I will lock that, but you need to decide where you want to do the locking and unlocking of the putting the dollar signs. And I've got a video for that as well, if you want to have a look and see what that's all about. And then you can add in what you want to do here. So what do we do if not found, and so on. Let's just leave that blank for now. We can close that off, and we can close that off. Click enter. Now what we're doing is we're looking at C9. So C9 is 5, and that's in fact what it's returning. So if we do A4, it should return 4. If we do row 4, column A4, that's what we've got. So that is Xlookup. This is obviously the longer version, which accommodates both the V and the Xlookup. Otherwise, you can do them independently. So yes, this does replace VLOOKUP. It does replace Xlookup. It can be used the same as index and match. Personally, as I said, I prefer index and match for various reasons. I use it all the time because I'm doing this for people with older versions of Excel. But really, yes, Xlookup can essentially do the same thing. And yes, there are a few more options, lookup backwards, that kind of thing. I normally build the spreadsheet differently, so I won't need those functions. But if you do, it is quite useful. So I hope that helps you, and I hope that it makes a bit of sense. And yeah, I wish you all the best with the spreadsheets. Thank you. Bye-bye.